everybody who's here and everybody who's going to join us on the recording later or a little late. For those who don't know me, I'm Helen Patterson. I'm the founder of Life Works Well, an HR consultancy boutique, and we help scaling organizations create healthy, high performance and heart-centered cultures. And we do that through a number of ways, through our people strategy, through our workshops and programs. And lately I've been focusing on Life Works Well When You Do, which is really after everything we've been through over the last several years and now where we are in the world, really without our health and well-being, work or life doesn't work well. So I'm kind of getting back to my roots on that. And then also we're very passionate about mentorship here. So I was happy to see a little bit of a chapter on mentorship and role models in the book. So I am just going to dive in and introduce our wonderful author today. The WORDZ We Wear, the book, and Vera Milan Gervais, who I met through a group program for through what was called Archangel Academy before, but I know it's been through several iterations. But we met in a program some time ago and at a couple events, and I just was so inspired by Vera and her positivity and how she shows up. And I did a little circle workshop at one of the events, and it was about what we wear and the color, but it was really deeper than that. And so now I kind of understand that first circle from reading the book. And so I'm just going to read a little bit about your bio, because the other thing is, for someone who's writing a book right now, and the limiting belief that I had forever, which was I'm too old, etc. I know. And I look to you as a role model and mentor. Of course, my dog's barking, as always, but hopefully the earphones help. But so I'm just so happy that you're here today to share some of your words of wisdom as well. So Vera is a speaker, author, award-winning businesswoman, and a mindset mentor who helps women develop confidence in themselves and their leadership skills. And her signature WORDZ We Wear program inspires women to challenge limiting beliefs and create their best life. And this is a lifelong progress for so many of us. It's an up and down. So if we can inspire the younger generations to embrace these concepts now, amazing. And it's so amazing that I learned a lot more about your story and about being born with what you term a birth defect, but it's really was just a unique thing that happened to you, and all of those surgeries that you went through. And there's one story that I'll ask you about later because it hit my heart, the dream one. And I just love that you have created these other identities. And so this was so timely for me as well as I've gone through my own journey. So I'd love for you to start us off by, again, sharing a little bit more about how you got to the writing of the book, because there are a few people that will watch later that are in the group that also are working on books and would like to get out there. So that writing process and taking all that knowledge and wisdom you had, a little bit about that, and then I know anything else you want to add about your journey and your background. So thank you again for being here. I'm really feeling blessed to be here with you today.
Oh, I'm delighted, Helen. It's always nice to get a chance to talk to people and share, I think, the stories that we all go through in one iteration or another. And I think part of the challenge, or part of the reason I wrote the book, is that I think women have this tendency to put everything first, everybody else first, everybody else's needs and projects first. One of the things that I'm working on now, and I'll flip back and forth because that's just the way my brain works. So just a forewarning on that. One of the projects I'm working on now is a talk based on leadership within, because I think it's time we stop talking about women in leadership, force-fitting us into leadership roles, and start talking about the leadership that we have within that will actually change leadership and will change the world. And I'm really being quite passionate about that, because as I talk to women, I realize we're all leaders. Like, we lead Boy Scout, well, Girl Scout, Boy Scout troops, we lead volunteer organizations, we lead teams, we lead families, and yet we just minimize ourselves. And it drives me absolutely crazy, because the best project managers out there are indeed women, and yet the project leads tend to be men, because we let them take the glory, if you will, for the work that we do to make them look good. So I'm on this mission to get women to stop being what I call 2IC, second in command, and step forward. Now that I can get off my pedestal, I can come back and say that I wrote this book because I've worked with women. The businesses that my husband and I worked, we primarily worked with women. My clients were primarily women. We worked as an outsource to the healthcare and pharmaceutical industry. My clients were primarily women, and I saw all these incredibly talented women just not taking advantage of the opportunities that they had. And some of it was like, it's not now, it's not time, I'm not ready. And we've all heard that women are more likely to wait until they're 120% ready, whereas men will step up right away. And it's a confidence factor. And I knew that, and I've watched it for decades. And I also knew that this was all about our beliefs and our perceptions about ourselves and about how we saw our identity. But I didn't do anything about it because everybody else is doing things about it. And who am I to talk about it? And then I had this episode happen where I was in the mall talking to a woman who was the parent of some of the kids, parent, and her kids had done activities with my kids. And I was updating her on what my kids were doing. And I told her my daughter was going to Montreal for a concert. And I named the band, and she goes, "That's a heavy metal concert." I go, "Yeah." She says, "Poor you." She said, "You must feel like a terrible parent." And I'm going, like, what? And she says, "Well, your daughter is a gamer and she's into heavy metal, and your son is gay. All those years that you worked when you could have been at home, you must feel like you should have stayed at home and looked after your kids." And I couldn't speak. And I walked away, and I said to my husband afterwards, like I said, what I should have said is, like, "What do you mean? My daughter speaks 5 languages. She owns her own home. My son's a respiratory therapist. When he's saving babies in neonatal units, I don't think the parents care what his sexual orientation is." Like, she was labeling my kids based on words. She was judging them. And that judgment just got me so fired up. And as we know, you get Mama Bear fired up, she's going to come out with her claws. And that's when I decided I had to write this book. Because if we keep letting people label us and judge us based on labels, we're always just going to continue to allow all this passivity of traditional patriotism and judgment continue with us. So that's what started me. As for the process, well, I'm a little bit erratic in my thought processes. I'm left brain, right brain. So I am not somebody I can make myself sit down and work through a project, but it's not my native strength. So I'm a thinker, and I will go, "Oh, there's a good idea. There's a good idea. There's a good idea. There's another one. There's another one. How do I put this together?" It's like a patchwork quilt. So my writing process wasn't sitting down and writing an entire outline of the book. I admire people who can do that. I did write what I wanted to communicate, but then one day I would sit down and say, "Okay, I'm going to write about mentors, or I'm going to write about expectations, or I'm going to write about identity." And I wrote them in bits and pieces like that. And my husband will tell you, I stained the windows on the doors back here, because in order to organize my thoughts, I took what I thought were washable markers, and I would draw lines and colors and everything on the patio doors, and I would stare at them and pull things together. But I left it in the sun a little bit too long, and it dried. And so there were still marks on my windows from that process years ago. But I think everybody has to approach their writing process from where they do it best. So when somebody says, well, maybe this is the best way to do it, maybe that's the best way to do it for some people, and there's going to be best ways to do it for other people. There's lots of writing groups out there. And if you're somebody who wants motivation, find a writing group to connect with. I know some of them. If people want to reach out, I can try and connect people with some of them. As for the publishing process, that's a completely different story, and we could do an entire episode on that. So I won't even go down that path.
Yeah, I know I chatted with you briefly about that the last time I saw you in person, and I can relate, having trying to get mine out. So thank you for that. And I remember talking to you, and we're very similar in that our brains are all over the place, and our conversation, we could completely follow our conversation, but if anyone was listening in, they'd be, how did these two talk to each other? So I have one more question for you. In the area of the book that I'd like to explore with you. And then I do want to make sure I have time to open up to whoever wants to ask a question, because this is your time. And I thank you both for being here, everybody for being here. So we've all heard about the glass ceiling. And other people have talked about, there's a brick ceiling for some people that are like in the diversity inclusion space, those who have, been marginalized and things like that. But when I started reading the book and you spoke about expectation ceilings and identity ceilings, I thought, wow, this is really cool. And I'm sure this is part of your process and programs that you go through. So I wouldn't mind if you would just kind of dive into a little lesson about it, really. And then some tips maybe, if that's okay, on how do you overcome that identity ceiling, having going through that myself, like being a lawyer, HR professional, writing some and speaking, and, how do you there's the expectations, obviously, and the belief systems. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you came up with that, and just some words of wisdom on that, too. I'm going to use words a lot with a Z or a Z.
Yeah, Z or a Z is fine. And I will come back and say the Z, or which I do say Z more often, is because I want people to intentionally think about it. I mean, when I spell it that way, it's disruptive. People go, there's a spelling error. And that's what I want. I just want to stop and grab attention. Why did she do that? And then maybe get that attention to say, okay, let's delve into this a little bit further. A little bit of background on identity, and then I'm going to go into teacher mode with a couple of slides. They're just quick little sketches I did this morning to make it easier. My whole goal with writing WORDZ, and it didn't start out with the title WORDZ We Wear. It actually started off with the title Expectation Ceiling, but the publishers didn't think that people would pick that up. So WORDZ We Wear works. The whole concept of identity is really a complex subject. And right now, of course, with everybody talking about, every kind of identity imaginable and every marginalized group and everything that kids these days are looking for and searching for. Part of my goal with writing this was to try and communicate that we don't have one identity. We have multiple identities, and our identities change depending on where we are and what we're doing. But they also change with where we are in our life, the lessons we learn, the choices we make, the actions we take. And if we spend our life trying to figure out who we are, all we're doing is spinning ourselves in circles. And so part of the reason I celebrate these 100 pairs of earrings that I have is because that's part of my identity. And every time I change a pair of earrings, I give myself permission to show up a different way. Because they're not just earrings that I buy because, oh, aren't those pretty? I can probably tell you the story around at least 50% of them specifically, and the other 50% I'll say, I know I bought that at a market because I got in a conversation with somebody and I just had to support them, right? And so, like these earrings here, I got these ones down in Costa Rica when I was down visiting my sister. And so when I think of that, it's like, oh, that we had so much fun there. We went down there as a family. And that's part of my fun identity and my exploration identity. And so when I'm on this call today, it's like, I want to have some fun. I want to be open. I want to have some adventure. And so I'll bring that identity with these earrings to this conversation. So I think that's a really important thing to understand before we talk about ceilings, is that we always think identity is fixed, or at least within this box. That's why we say I'm a mother, or I'm a wife, or I'm a product manager, or I'm an author, is so that we fit into boxes. And those boxes make it easier for us to somehow, we think they make it easier for us to connect to other people. And maybe they do, but they also make it easier for us to stay in those boxes. So one of the fun things I do, I'm jumping around and I will come back to expectations. One of the fun things I do when I have workshops is I give people labels and I tell them, you can't write your name on it. You can't write what you do. You have to write your superpower on it. You have to write something on it that says who you are at your core. And it is amazing how women in particular, you walk into a room and you'll see shaman, or you'll see curious, or you'll see heart-centered, and you go, oh, like, what does that mean? And now you get into conversations that are meaningful. And that makes such a difference on how we communicate and how we feel about ourselves. And when we feel good about ourselves, we're more likely to show up in a way that's open, in a way that's inviting, in a way that allows other people to be open and invited and accepted. And that's what we're all after, is being open and invited, right? So that's part of my goal. But to come back to the whole concept of expectations and whatnot, I've got a couple of slides. Can I share them, Helen? Can you give me? Yep, you've got it set up to share. So I'm going to hopefully share the right thing, because sometimes I share the wrong screen.
Yeah, I love that. And I just love, I know we could spend days on this, because the labels is something that I've been really, curious about and exploring myself. And because we are so much, we aren't really our titles. Society kind of,
Yeah,
brought us along that right path of that's who we are, when we're
yeah,
really our energy and so much more, right? So I love
right.
that we're talking about this. So
So
okay.
on this screen, this is the basis of identity. Identity is based on our actions, behaviors, and our choices. That's what determines who we become. So the things that we do, the way in which we do them, and the choices we make determine who we become. So if my action is to go for a walk every day because my behavior is that I want to be healthy, part of my identity is that I'm going to be healthy. If my action is to go to school because I want to be educated, my behavior is openness, whatnot, my choice is going to be to improve myself and to grow, and growth becomes part of my identity. It gets more complicated than that, but that's just the basics. So they call it the ABCs of identity. And that's really important to the whole concept of expectations. Because if we take a look at what influences our actions, behaviors, and our choices, it's our own biases and beliefs. It's okay. Like, I can do this. I can't do this. I should do this. I shouldn't do this. I deserve this. I don't deserve this. I'm not supposed to do this. My family has never done this. My community wouldn't accept this. My boss wouldn't accept this. My kids would be appalled if I did this. Or I've got to be a good girl. I need to look after those people first. Those are kind of the biases and the beliefs that we bring, the internal biases and beliefs that we bring into the situation. But we're also influenced by the external biases and beliefs, that the pressures that are placed on us. So again, if our culture doesn't allow women to work outside of the home, or our culture expects us that we have to caregive and we can't ask the male of the household to caregive, or the spouse of the house, that sets up the kind of expectations that lead us to our actions and our behaviors. So we've got these biases and beliefs feeding us, and that creates the expectations that lead us to whatever our choices are. So you can see that it's not simple. And that's why when I say the expectation ceiling, it's not like the glass ceiling to me is like we're putting the blame on someone else. We're saying, okay, somebody else is putting that pressure on us and saying we can't do it. When you could look through it and say, as some of the women I interviewed did, okay, it's glass. I can see the other side. I can go through it. I can break it. Whereas the expectation ceiling is something that we probably don't see, but we feel. And if we take that to the next step, what happens is that What holds us down and what we think we can or can't do is everything that they say we can't do. So internally, I'm too old. I'm, I'm too unfit. I'm not uneducated. I'm too busy. I've got too many family responsibilities. Those are all internal can'ts that we put on ourselves that say we can't do something. And then the external ones that comes from our families. I've had families say to me, like, what are you doing? You should be retired right now. What are you doing going off on another career? And those are the sorts of expectations that get you to question yourself. And I think that's what a lot of the can'ts are about that hold us back is like, what will people think? Oh my goodness. Will I upset people? Will I alienate people? Will I make a fool of myself? And that's the can'ts that hold us back from doing it. The cans come from mostly from our hearts and our souls and our passions, right? If I, like me writing this book, it's like I always knew I could write a book, but why should I write a book? Like, who am I to write a book? But when I said, like, when the labels start affecting my family, the mama bear is going to come out and, yeah, I can do this. And I'm going to do it in such a way that nobody else has to feel that they're a bad mom because they work from home or not forget about work from home. And so the can comes from believing that we can do it. Where we come into play with how we make the tips, if you will, Helen, and right now they're very broad, is what I call the difference between an active mindset and a passive mindset. It's the same thing as an active choice versus a passive choice. An active choice is when we say, I am going to do this. A passive choice is when we say, I'll wait until somebody asks me to do it. Or somebody does ask you to do something and you don't really want to do it, but you think you should do it, and you say yes. That's a passive choice. So passive choice is just going down the path of our lives with our actions, behaviors, and choices based on what's probably acceptable and expected. An active choice is something that says, is my heart into this? And do I really want to do this? Will this make a difference? And I think that when we take those active choices, that's when we reach that point of, like, fear steps in and say, do you really want to do this? Do you want to risk? And one of the things I've had to learn is that fear is a protector. Like, we talk about fear as if it's this great big monster. And in some of the stories in my book, I think I talk about how I thought fear was a big, black, deep monster. But fear is a protector. And its instincts are to keep us from doing something that will prevent us from belonging. But if we're not belonging to ourselves, does that matter? And so if we take a look at fear and say, you know what? I understand why you're asking me that, but I've got this. You've worked really hard. You're tired. Take a rest. I'm going to do this. I've got faith and hope and joy behind me, and we're going to make sure that this works. And when we do that, we're making an active choice that we can change our mindset and change our expectations. And that's why I've got this here as like a teeter-totter, an up and down, because the pressures not to do anything, to stay passive, come from what we call our peers, our parents, our preachers, and our teachers. Those are the external pressures that we have that keep us under that expectation ceiling. What we have to do is make the choice that our heart, our soul, our dreams matter. And that's how we raise the expectation ceiling.
I love that. Just a quick thing that Deborah was wondering to keep you going on this point of passive, would it be shoulded into something? And I don't know, Deborah, if you want to expand on that, but does that?
Yeah, please do, because I can't see the chat right now.
Yeah, so a lot of times we get shoulded into doing things. You should do this, you should do that, you should be this, you should go there. So I think that passive kind of relates to being shoulded into something.
Absolutely. One of my goals, somebody asked me when I started off on this mission, what would success look like if I achieved what I wanted to do? I said, should would be gone from the dictionary. Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So, yeah,
wonderful.
our passive choices are definitely our should choices. And, that's the weights on our shoulders. That's what somebody said to me one time is a should is a shoulder weight. And it's like, yeah. So if it feels heavy, I thought that was a really nice analogy. If it feels heavy, it's a should. So shake it off and look for what feels light. So I'll stop sharing on that and come back to the discussion. But that just makes it visually. I'm a visual person, so I just think it's easier to explain it visually like that.
No, that was really fantastic. And it gives us, more of what's in here and what's, beyond with your program. So thank you for that. Now, I know Lovell did mention she had a question. And I mean, I could, again, ask Vera many, and have a chat with her all day long. But I did want to make sure I open it up. So Lovell, did you want to just come out and ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Helen. I'm so sorry, Deborah and Vera. I did message Helen. I'm so sorry to join a little bit late. I was running late this morning. Missed the introduction. So very quickly in 2 sentences. Again, my name is Lovell. I use the pronouns she and her. And I have known Helen for many years, and we've worked together on the HRPA board together. I have been in the corporate HR world for about 15 years, and very recently jumped into a very bold decision that I took to get into consulting. And a lot of what you're saying there is resonating, how it is so hard to make those decisions because we weigh ourselves down. Should, like, that was such a great word and what a great analogy that you provided just now, that should is a shoulder word. So just shake it off and get going with what you need to do. And very rightly, people just pull you down so much. I consulted, I took advice from a lot of people, and they kept saying, it's very hard, it's very hard. And I understood that, but it kept pulling me down and holding me back. And I don't know where I got the courage from. There are people, supporters like Helen, who just pushed and said, give it a shot. If you don't try, you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for all those perspectives. And I really appreciate being here. My question was actually 2-part, but first I want to know, what do you think the identity crisis that you said, is it more prevalent in a female mindset, or is it similar across all human beings?
Ooh, interesting. I think it probably crosses everything. I mean, when I talk about my book, I say it's meant for women, but it applies to all marginalized groups. And we know there's a ton of marginalized groups. I do also think that men are going through an identity crisis because we are changing the landscape by speaking up and showing up. And so we have upset their status quo. And I won't go political, but we've seen the response in the world for upsetting the status quo. It's very disturbing to a lot of people. One of the things that I realized when I started talking about identity is that to make a change or to address something that's as massive as an identity crisis is something I can't handle. So if we come back to like the expectations and whatnot, what can I handle? What I can handle is reaching out to women and helping women one by one through like a mentoring effect, a ripple effect, to say, it's okay for me to own my identity. And it's kind of like a grassroots thing. If we give people permission to be who they are, then we allow them to become who they have the potential to be. So you'll see a graphic on my website. It's be, believe, become. So we need to be who we are. We need to believe that we can do something. We need to believe we deserve what we want. And then we will have the strength and the courage, as you called it, to take the actions, make the behavioral changes and the choices that will allow us to become who we have the potential to be. And my logo is a type of Mobius strip. For anybody who's not mathematic, a Mobius strip is a strip that no matter where you go on it, it's endless. It just continues. And it's based on a delta. I don't think I have one really handy, but it's based on a delta because a delta, a triangle, is a symbol of change. And so I believe life and identity is a continuous growth, and that you go over and over and over again. And if we take a look at it from that perspective level, then we have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to change. Maybe by changing my change, I'm going to inspire somebody else to take a change who's going to inspire somebody else. And that I believe is how we will help the identity crisis, is just, let's not worry about changing the world. Let's worry about changing ourselves, role modeling it to others, and then helping the people that, like Deborah, like you're in the role you're in, you have an impact on so many people in the admin role. So just more role modeling at them, inspiring them, helping them. That's we can do that. That's something we can own. So let's take on what we can own, and then let other people take on what they can own.
Wow.
That is so profound.
Amazing. I know you have a second part, but I just wanted to say that I can't wait because there's so many nuggets and quotes coming out of this that are very inspiring, because, that whole thing about be the change that you want to see. And, we can make the choices. I think a lot of people don't believe that they have the ability to make the choices and that they can be their own journey maker. You know what I mean? So fantastic. So Lovell, I think you had a second part to your question as well. So over to you.
Thank you. Yeah. So again, still on the identity part of our conversation, how do you think the identity concept is applicable to employees in an organization?
Can you explain why you're asking that question?
No, because you had mentioned all of us have an identity, and it is within us to, and we can control the choices that we make and the way we change our behaviors to go with what change we want. So, with everything that is going on in the world, the way organizations used to do business, they're not doing it. It cannot be done the same way. It's a lot of change, not only with technology, with AI and everything, a lot of change going through. So when, as HR professionals, when we are either motivating or coaching or training, not only the workforce, but especially the leaders, because as we know, it all trickles down from the leaders. Can we use this as motivation, or as something that we can ask people to reflect on and think about, and help them to be better leaders, better workers, perform better, whichever way we can put it. So that's where my brain went to.
Yeah. Okay. So, and the reason I was asking, I didn't know where you meant from a role point of view or for an initiative point of view or whatever. So, two ways to look at this: one from the employee point of view, one from the leader point of view. And having run businesses for 30 years, I think I'm comfortable answering from both perspectives there. I think as leaders, one of the biggest opportunities we have now, and it's something we've had all along, but now it's really important, is to acknowledge individuals as individuals, not just as a role, right? So for instance, we ran a call center for years, and it was a healthcare call center. So these individuals would be helping people with patient education, disease information, drug information. And they all had different strengths. You couldn't put them on a call and say, you have to follow this exact script and you have to do this and you have to do that. You had to recognize that these were individuals, some more sensitive than others. And so if you were on a call like smoking cessation where people were screaming and yelling all the time, you had to rotate them fairly often because you didn't want them to be pulled down. So that's acknowledging that they're individuals and their degree of sensitivity or comfort or whatever, and putting them in a role where they can succeed. And that's what my husband used to always say, is that, where can we help you to succeed? And I think as employers and leaders, we sometimes forget that. We look at it as like, how can that person help me succeed? As opposed to, how can I help them succeed? And so that one works both ways. Now, as an employee, you also need to say what you want. So how many times have we had certain employees that will step into place and say, I need a raise. And you go, well, you can't get a raise because, that's the pay level or whatever. And then they leave and the person you have to hire is at a higher pay level already, right? Are we looking at it from a point of view of the value of the individual, or are we looking again at the role from pay scales? And I think we need to take a look at all of those factors, because employees are no longer blindly loyal. They don't have to be. And they aren't going to be, because look at the way they get laid off at a moment's notice. Why would they be blindly loyal? So if you want to have employees that make you look good so that you succeed, I think you have to look at what do they need so that they can succeed. And that comes from you asking them, but it also comes from them coming to you and saying, can we have a chat outside of review time? Can we have a chat about what's really important to me and how I want to develop? Will the company support me in getting a degree in this? Will the company blah, 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 blah. And I think it's just, I mean, maybe it's obvious, but it's like, if we just treated people as human beings instead of cogs in the wheel, I think the world would be such a better place.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yes. We say amen to that.
Yeah. And, Helen and I were in a group chat, in-person group chat on Wednesday night, and same things keep coming over and over again. And, you rightly said, Vera, that employees need to take some accountability as well and come up and say, this is what I want. However, I think it just still comes back to the leadership. Because if we don't, as an employee, if I do not have that psychological safety that there is not going to be a repercussion of me voicing my opinion or saying what I want or what I would like, I will not say it, right? Because let's face it, I have a mortgage to pay and I have bills to pay, and I do not want to lose my job because I spoke up, and here they're saying, oh, she's like whatever, whatever. And so I think it does come back to, again, what is the mindset of leadership and the leaders who are, whether are they providing that environment for employees to speak up. But yes, of course, I mean, if there is an opportunity, then they do need to speak up as well, because let's face it, how much ever we think, I tell my husband all the time, I can read your mind. But the fact of the matter is that, yeah, for more or less you can, but not exactly. So thank you for that perspective.
Yeah, thank you. I have just one, it kind of picking up on to continue the conversation, because the one chapter was success is believing.
Yes.
And I really, because this is again, the biggest challenge in the workplace and the world, which is amazing that we can always bring it back, given the nature of where we are. We show up confident. This is something you wrote. We show up confident when we are being true to ourselves. And and then there was another one. They gave a story you were telling, and they were giving her permission to own her gifts and show up with presence and confidence. So in that chapter, I think it was Jeannie or something. And I just thought it's so interesting because this is the whole evolution of being, the whole belonging and being who you are and bringing your authenticity. Like we should belong wherever we are, regardless. It doesn't matter, right? But to Lovell's point earlier is about the way that structures and systems are set up and designed in the traditional workplaces. People don't feel comfortable and safe to use their voice and show up. So there definitely is change. And I think that being able to offer people the opportunity to have programs like yours, Vera, or others, where we give, it's not just the usual training, on compliance and everything else. It's like the growth opportunities, rather than having to, go pay for yourself. So I think I'd love to know your thoughts on bringing something like this into an organization and relating it to the success metrics, because there has to be, right? The KPIs, the key performance. Like, to me, I mean, it seems so simple. Like, if you're happy and you show up who you are and you love what you do and you have the purpose and you're aligned to the mission and vision, you're going to produce, and it's going to be a fun place to work. So, but, I am very, you know, I've always been called Pollyannish or something like that. Someone gave me that label. So what do you think, Vera? How would you go about bringing this in and into the organizations?
Well, actually, I do workshops with groups and teams. And I've done them when they're doing their strategic sessions or just when they're doing their kickoffs for the year and stuff like that. And what I love to do is to get people to talk about their superpowers and their strengths. Because it's really interesting when you ask somebody to write that on a piece of paper and talk to the next person, they'll say, I didn't know you could do that, because you weren't expected to do it in your role at work or whatever. And it's like, oh, you like graphic design? Geez, the next time I have to do a PowerPoint presentation, can I call on you to help me? And all of a sudden, you've opened an opportunity for somebody to do something that they're good at and passionate about that helps somebody else in the organization, that increases the productivity, increases the visibility, increases the happiness of everybody involved. And so it's partially the way we do talk. It's partially the way we hold ourselves back. We say, okay, this is my role. I'm going to stay in this box. And we probably need to stay in those boxes. And the organization depends. Obviously, some organizations are tighter than others. But when I can sit there and I can say to somebody, okay, how did you feel about that promotion? Women have the sense, I wasn't ready for it. I'm grateful for it, but I'm really nervous. I'm scared. I don't know what my clients are going to think. Then it becomes, okay, let's talk about your language. Let's talk about why would your bosses have figured you were ready for it? Well, because my clients really like the work. I'm OCD. I always get it done on time. I said, whoa. Let's change this language. You're not OCD. You're trustworthy and reliable. We feel better. We feel different. And now that I'm trustworthy and reliable, I'm comfortable that I am good in my role. It's not like I'm OCD and I just got there because I make everybody else look good. It's like I make everybody else look good. And so I can do this for other people and I can make myself look good. So it comes back to that language. And when people say, I'm just beginning, I'm just new at the role, just is another word I want to see just lost. Okay? It's a limiting word. We are not just yet, maybe. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. But I'm not just beginning. I haven't become an expert yet. There's a big difference on what your mind thinks and what your body reacts between those two phrases. And so when I go into teams, I like working with teams as opposed to great big groups, but big groups work too. I mean, anything that brings people together. But I love teams because then when you get the teams together, they start supporting one another. And the electricity that goes around the room, that gives me so much pleasure when I watch these people all start to go into these little individual conversations, which normally you don't want in a workshop. But for me, when they do that, that means they're relating. And so I'll let them go off on a little bit and we'll do interactive stuff and then we'll come back. And what did you learn about that person? And it's so rewarding to watch even the leaders go, wow, my team is interacting. My team is working together. That gets rid of some of that competition and that comparison. And that brings the productivity level and the culture closer to being what they want it to be. So back to the question of like, is it the leader or is it the employee? The leader has the capability to bring in this type of training, this type of interaction to say, okay, how does my team learn to feel good about themselves, to step into their potential, to become everything they can be, as opposed to how can I get that more work out of them? Because people don't work at their best when they're under pressure. As a matter of fact, some people resist and work less.
Absolutely. This is exciting. I mean, definitely companies that I've worked for, there's so much focus. I mean, the last 4 or 5 years have been very challenging. So, cost cutting, layoffs, so many things that the pressure, so they kind of put this aside, but they don't realize how beneficial it could be. We'll have to chat about some workshops for
That'd be fun.
especially in one of my new clients. Anyway, I have one more question, and then I want to make sure Deborah and Lovell have an opportunity because I really loved the story that you shared in the book. And spoiler alert if you haven't finished it all yet, but about the dream or what you called the nightmare and your grandmother. So would you mind sharing? Oh, I just got goosebumps too. Oh, would you mind sharing that for us?
That
Yeah.
was a turning point in my life. Absolutely. The backstory, of course, I'm going to start at the trigger point as opposed to the backstory. So when I'm going to start even before the trigger point. I was married young, divorced young, disowned by my father because Irish Catholic. I wasn't allowed to be disowned. So we didn't talk for a lot of years. And I was just coming, and that isolated me even more from family and from feeling good about myself. And so we were coming back to terms with one another, Dad and I come back to visit and walked in and they were sorting photographs on the dining room table. And I walked up and I said, "Who's this woman?" And Dad says, "That's my mother. I know her." You can't know her. She died when I was 5 years old. But I know her. I see her every night in my dreams. And I had called it a nightmare because for as long as I could remember, I'd have this dream, maybe not every night, but certainly on an ongoing basis. And I was running through this hayfield. And when I say it's a hayfield, it's not one of those dreams where you're going through meadows with butterflies and flowers. It was a dry, dusty hayfield because I'm from Calgary, from the prairies. And at the end of this path is this woman in a soiled apron and an old-fashioned puffy dress. And she's frowning and she's got her arms on her hips. And I'm scared. I'm a kid. I'm a child. And I'm scared, but there's no place else to go. So I go up to her and she picks me up and she goes, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "You don't belong here." And she gives me this hug, but then she sets me down, turns me around and says, "Go back." And so all my life, I felt rejected. Like this woman, who I have no clue who the hell she is telling me to go back. And when I looked at that, I'm going, my grandmother rejected me? And then Mom and Dad, you know how parents look across the table at one another, they just have this way to communicate. And Mom goes, "Well, maybe the doctors were wrong." And I'm going, I catch up on this. I was like, "What do you mean they're wrong?" "Well, they said you had a brain clot to your blood clot to your brain, but that it probably wasn't serious and you wouldn't remember anything." No kidding, I didn't remember anything. I died. I didn't remember anything prior to that surgery. The first memory I have of my life is waking up after that surgery, literally in a pool of blood. That is my first memory of life. And so finding out that I died changed the interpretation of that story because I realized my grandmother didn't reject me. She sent me back. She sent me back because I have a purpose. And knowing that, I mean, it took me a few years still to get past all the baggage I'd carried for 30 years. But knowing that was like, oh my God, maybe I am lovable. Maybe I am acceptable. Maybe there is a place in life for me. And it turned my life around. It made such a difference. And now I'm going to cry.
I'm going to cry too. And I just, because when I read it, it was so moving too. And then just to hear you, oh my gosh, I had goosebumps the whole time. So thank you very much for sharing that, because if I can, share what I took away and what I hope others will from your book and encourage them to read it, whatever age, stage you're at, that, those words we wear, the limiting beliefs we set on ourselves are just not true, and that we all have gifts and talents. We all have something to give, and sometimes the journey takes longer to figure out what that is, but that's what your book will help people do too, in your programs. And so I think that was just wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I do want to ask if there's any more questions, because I do want to ask about what's next for you. I already kind of know, but I'm excited. Any other final questions while we have Vera? And again, thank you so much for taking the time with us today.
Deborah does. She just raised her hand.
Yay. Okay.
Not really a question. It's just a huge thank you. Helen's recommendation of this book, the timing was so perfect. It's Administrative Professionals Month, week, day, whatever. Wednesday was the actual day that it's celebrated on. And it's such a conversation within the admin community. It's like, why do we have, some people are on the fence of, well, why do we have an admin professionals day? And others are, we need this day. It's time to celebrate. And the whole point, in my view, is that we have this day because admins are seen, they're not heard. And we want to change that. We realize that our peers, the marketing people, the salespeople, or whatever, they don't have their own day, but the day was created to give admins a voice, to give them a presence. And I was chosen to do a 5-minute TED Talk style thing for an APD event, and it's 3 days over 2 hours each day. And so my day to speak is today. And I've been working on this talk for a month now. And everything in your book this week and everything you've said today and a few things that Helen have said today, it's it has just validated everything that I have in my talk. And it's okay, so I guess this is right, because, I talk about owning my career. I was never meant to be an admin. I was going to work for Eastern Airlines just like my dad. That was always the plan. Anytime anybody ever asked me that was the plan. There was no other plan. And so I talk about how when I owned it as a career, how things changed and opportunities showed up. And I talk about how it takes a village, finding those admin communities, that's my village. Those are my people. That's where I get my support, and then willingness over readiness, and, because, I use the line in the speech that willingness will take you places that readiness never will. And then I close it out with the two phrases that have helped me over the years, which is using I am statements and yet statements, putting I am before something positive. I am a leader. I am, capable. I am strong, whatever, and then when I'm lacking in something or I'm not feeling confident about something, adding yet. I'm not ready yet. I don't know how to do this yet. And so everything, with these labels, I grew up with term of endearment that my family gave me, not my parents, aunts and uncles. My nickname growing up was Dum Dum. I could, and back then, and it was because, as a toddler, I did something that was probably really dumb, as toddlers will do, and the name just stuck. And I didn't realize for years how much that affected me, you know. I mean, for years, like, because this was pre, call display days, I'd call somebody and they wouldn't expect me to call them. I was, preteen or whatever, and I would call one of my aunts or uncles and I'd say, "Hey, it's Debbie." "Who?" "It's Dum Dum." "Oh yeah, what's up? What do you want?" You know, and I mean, I've owned that term of endearment now, but I've owned it with they're wrong. I've proved them wrong, you know, um, and but I think it bothered me for so long because as somebody who was a teen mother, who only has a GED, who went to night school to get my university in the States. It's college, but it's university here. Like it's I don't know. Anyway, but then I didn't finish that degree because I moved to Canada, and none of my credits would transfer. So I don't have that degree, and so that bothered me for the longest time. And then it's like I don't need it because what I learned in my degree doesn't serve me in my role. Like my role is about people and service, and it doesn't require a degree. My degree would not do anything for me, you know. So I looked for professional development opportunities and things that provided me growth in my career, you know. And so anyway, it's a long story, but anyway, just thank you, Vera, for writing this, and thank you, Helen, for this recommendation, because the timing, it's fate.
That's so good. I'm going to add two things to what you said, because you said some really important things there. First of all, owning. Owning is an act of choice. And as soon as we own something, we give ourselves permission to make more active choices. So whatever we own is powerful, because if we just accept something, that doesn't mean we own it. There's a huge difference. It's like when we accept something versus we take something on. Like if we're taking something on and we don't own it, then we're just accepting it, right? And so that whole concept of owning is what gives you, to your point, the willingness to do something, because now it's ours. If you think about it, we look after our possessions a lot better than we look after other people's possessions. Most of us. The other thing I will add is I totally get what you say about I didn't finish. I have a 2-year certificate. I didn't finish my degree, partially because I got divorced and walked away from everything. But when people ask me what I did my master's in, because everybody assumes I've got to have a master's to have done what I've done, I tell them I made my master's in mistakes. So I have a master's in mistakes and a PhD in wondering what's potential. So, so it is, as you said, it's like it's what we take on and what we believe. That's what comes back to the expectations. If I had lived my life according to my physical problems, my culture, the Catholic Church, the challenges that I had in relationships and stuff, I would probably be, I don't know, destitute somewhere. But when we own, my father called me a black sheep. I decided to own that and to prove myself. And that was probably one of the best things that I did. So what we own is what we take on, and that's part of our identity. So yeah, I mean, we could talk for 3 years.
Yes. Yes. And we will have to maybe another time. Thank you, everyone. That was so incredible. And I hope many, many people read this book and that you have the opportunity to work with you. I'd just like to close by saying thank you again, but I would love for you to just let people know where they can get a hold of you, Vera, if they haven't already, on LinkedIn and everything else, and what's next for you.
Yeah. So I am on LinkedIn. It's Vera Milan Gervais. So I'm there. I post most Thursdays and sometimes in between. I do have a Substack called Nearly Naked Truths, which I send out weekly on. I'm having fun with that. But the easiest way to get hold of me, my website is Vera Milan Gervais, and my email is vera@veragervais.com. So my website is Vera Gervais, and my email is vera@veragervais.com. So any questions, reach out to me that way. My next little adventure I am ready for. Yeah, I am ready for. Next Saturday, a week this Saturday, I'm doing a TEDx talk for TEDx Oshawa. So I'm really excited about that. It's called The Art of Alignment, How to Use Your Core to Gain Confidence. And so I'm really, really excited about that. And obviously I will post on that when it's actually released. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, so excited too. So excited.
Wow.
And really look forward to watching it. I still may see if I can get a ticket. I was just
Sold out.
I didn't know how you'd feel if you would like that support in the audience, because I was going to say, we'll send out vibes. I will send out your information to people on the newsletter list and those that signed up and maybe didn't come. And there's a lot of other people that are part of the community that couldn't make it, that are on the book circle list. So they'll be able to watch this amazing conversation. And so everyone, thank you. And Vera, thank you for writing this book and for inspiring and for being, my mentor as well and inspiration to keep going. So I am so thankful and grateful for all of you, and have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah.
And good luck.
Yeah.
Next week.
Thank you so much for hosting, Helen, and nice to connect with you, Deborah. We'll connect on LinkedIn, of course.
Yeah.
And thanks again, Vera. This is I haven't read the book, and I did tell Helen, I said, I haven't read the book. I have to get a hold of it and read it. But the topic itself was so motivating, and I really, really wanted to come and hear your views on this. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
All
Thanks.
right.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.